So one of the things I've been thinking about lately is I have felt just so much anger and frustration at how people can be so hateful and wrong and mean and sinful and do things in the name of God that are so contrary to what is truly of God, and just so baffled and blown away. And I've just been realizing, and I feel like this is something I just keep realizing all the time, is that this is exactly what the Bible is talking about with sin. This is the hardness of heart that God is talking about. The sin in mankind's heart is that as we choose sin, we choose our sinful desires and we justify them however we want, is that that is exactly what happens. There's just that hardness, and you will not listen to what's good. You will not listen to what's fair. You will not be reasoned with. You're completely unreasonable. And you even think you're reasonable, so that keeps you from actually being reasonable and being corrected. And then your heart is just continuously putting things out to make you feel like you're doing what's good when you're not. And that keeps you from actually ever being rebuked and ever really coming to look at yourself and deal with your sin. And that's the hardness of heart. I was watching this woman talk about the things that happened to Black people when they were enslaved, and afterwards when there was like these lynchings and everything going on. And she was specifically remarking on how this little white girl, there's a photo that she had blurred out, but there was this little white girl looking at a man who was lynched. And she was remarking at how this little girl had like a smirk on her face. And she was saying, if that was a puppy, that woman, that little girl would be so upset. But like so a puppy is worth more than this man's life. And she was talking about how people who were, enslaved, how they would make these laws, these outrageous laws that, it totally took any sort of accountability away from any person if they killed their slave. How they would have, like psychology, and they would say that there was something wrong with, these people who wanted to run away. There was a condition wrong with them, and that, but all of that's the hardest of heart. Is rather than hearing what's really true, really listening and caring about what's going on, you set up these things to make you feel like it can make sense and it's justifiable. And it's, we always think that sin is going to be just this outright obvious evil. And though it is, people can go so far in feeling justified in that and feeling like they're doing this for a reasonable reason. And that is precisely what the Bible is talking about. That's that frustration of that God sees in man and sees with how man is towards God, and won't think about God and really acknowledge God, and how God sees things with man in man. How man will not love our neighbor as ourselves. And there's 1,001 ways that we can do that. But what is specific to Jesus is that Jesus, his work is to really get at that heart. It's not to just give us a bunch of, morals to live by, a rule book to live our lives by. It's meant to change the heart to that listening heart. Jesus says all the time, he who has ears to hear, because that's the condition, right? The hard heart doesn't listen. It listens, in the physical, but it does not listen with the heart. It doesn't listen with the spirit, and that's the difference. Jesus is saying he has the power to get us to really be people who hear, who are slow to speak and quick to hear. And that doesn't mean that everyone who, becomes a Christian walks in that, because the truth is Christianity, in the ways it's twisted around, honestly just becomes a stronghold for that hardness of heart in people. It becomes a way for them to harden their hearts, which is baseline proof that their religion is doing the opposite of what religion is supposed to do. Religion is supposed to soften our hearts and make us peaceable and reasonable, and to listen and do what is truly good, and not just say we do good, but actually do it. But Jesus himself, though people do that, is absolutely the one who is speaking to that. He's the one who's telling mankind that that's what's going on. He's the one able to get at the hearts and fix that.